Collecting all the royalties for your music is incredibly important, but sadly, so many artists are missing out, especially when it comes to mechanical royalties. In this episode, we're going to talk about how you get everything you're owed. So let's get to it.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 290 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner. Joining me is Chris Robley. Chris, 290 episodes. Can you believe it?
It only took us about 47 years to record this many episodes, but we're nearing 300. What are we going to do? Something special.
I don't know. There's got to be balloons involved at least. You can't hit a milestone like 300 without some balloons. And
I remember we had balloons for our 100th episode, and we live streamed it, didn't we? I think we video live streamed it.
We did something that was
long before
ago.
People were live streaming things. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, if you're listening to this podcast, I want to remind you that you need to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. It's on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, the notifications so you get alerted when there's new episodes. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcast and all your podcast apps that you might be listening to podcasts through. Be sure to subscribe. We've got episodes rolling almost every week, and we've got lots of good content coming up. Especially, I'm going to tease the episodes that we have coming up. We've got some major deep dive into NFTs, Chris.
So much that I think you're chopping it into 2 episodes, aren't you?
I am, because we were looking at the notes, and it was just too much much to comprehend all in one episode. And
that's
especially
be a good one.
With current events and this recent week, random website called hitpiece.com showed up selling NFTs of everybody's
literally
music,
everything on Spotify,
which really confused the idea of what is NFT anyway. If it's just a download, but it's not. But this website really confused a lot of people and angered a lot of people, and it probably was a bit of a setback for the NFT world. A little minor blip, I might say.
It was either like the scam of the century or performance art.
I think it might have been performance
art.
Of both. Who knows? A little of both, yes.
Sometimes those are the same thing, right?
When you have a scam and you get caught, it becomes performance art.
Right.
But today we've got a great episode. We've got an interview with Kris Ahrend from the MLC. We'll preview that in a second. We've got listener calls later in the show. You're going to want to stick around for some great questions, and lots of calls have been coming in. So we love answering your calls live on the show. But first, Chris, the DIY Musician Conference is back August 26th through 28th in real life. Real life in Austin, Texas, this August 26th through 28th, August 2022. And you need to be there. So much has changed in the music industry over the last couple of years since we've had conferences. And the good news is, and this is very important. Are you listening? Very important. Your ticket, which right now is only $99. You can use that ticket to come in person, or if you're someplace in the world where you can't make it to Austin, you can watch online. So it's a hybrid event. So buy that ticket, whether you think you can make it to Austin or not. Buy that ticket now. It's only $99. You're going to have access to so much great information. And for those watching online, we're still going to do some virtual networking and things that are very conferencey, but being there in person this year is going to be super special. I can't wait to be back with everyone, all of you. It's one of the highlights of the year, and it hasn't happened.
I know. It's going to be a blast. It's tough to explain to people the feeling of just all being together with, 1,000, 1,500 artists who are all doing the same thing, not in the same way, but all putting their passion out there, trying to get fans, build an audience, make more money from their art. And we all just understand each other. It's no matter what genre, no matter where you've traveled from, people come from all over the world. It's like we're all just on the same page. Where do you get that in your life?
You don't show up August 26th to 28th. But right now, the ticket's $99. Go to DIYmusiciancon.com. And the benefit of buying in early is that you get access to the showcase opportunities. We're trying to expand some of the times we get people on stage, whether between sessions. We're doing the CD Baby open mic, and we give priority access to people that have bought in early. Also, if you get your hotel room, if you get 2 nights, we'll give you a free ticket. So just head over to the website, DIYmusiciancon.com, and just get it all taken care of right now.
Yeah.
And then come back and finish listening to this episode.
Well, one more like plug for why people should get their tickets early. We haven't revealed the menu of special in-person things yet, but you'll be on the list to receive first notice, which means your name can be in the hat early for anything we, like you said, the open mic. But there's going to be mentoring stuff. In the past, there's been special sort of in-studio experiences with different platforms. Whatever it is that we're doing this year, you'll be first to know about it if you get your ticket right now.
Yeah, and we're trying to make it more interactive than ever before, especially when it comes to things like video and just some of the ideas we have that to do some sessions and group music video making and all this kind of stuff that I think it's just going to be so much fun to be there and exciting and feel like, man, that really gave me the boost and energy I needed, especially after this last couple of years of craziness. It'll be good for your soul. So DIYmusiciancon.com, and Kris and I hope to see you there.
Sorry, one more plug. If we haven't told you already, I just want to let everyone know there is a pool on the rooftop of the hotel, and that pool has a bar, and you're allowed to take your drinks into the pool.
Yes, we had an epic CD Baby staff pool party the Sunday after the conference. There's already talk of it. I saw people sharing pictures of some pool floaties they wanted to buy to bring. So it's a lot of fun. I can't recommend it enough. I've been to so many conferences during my time at CD Baby, and this one is just so much fun, and you just feel like you've learned a lot. You've had a special connection with other artists, and you just feel seen and excited and inspired. So DIYmusiciancon.com, get your tickets today. All right, we're going to be talking about mechanical royalties today. We've got an interview that I did with the CEO of the MLC, which is the Mechanical Licensing Collective. They're a new organization in the United States. And even if you're not in the United States, this information is important to you, because if you have music that's being streamed in the United States, this impacts you. So, Kris, so many artists are just confused about royalties, how they get them. If you use CD Baby Pro, which I talked to Kris about, you're covered for this. But so many artists are missing out on royalties. And I've got a hot take. You want to know what my hot take is?
Let's hear it.
Here's my hot take. Artists, some of you listening to and watching this right now, are willingly giving your royalties away to other artists just because you won't do the simple work of properly registering your music. And with CD Baby Pro, we take care of that for you. All you got to do is go fill in a little extra information. It's money that's there for you. Don't let it be paid out to other artists. Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift, they don't need your money.
Well, if the rich musicians who don't need our money get our money after, 2 or 3 years, if it just sits there unclaimed, it gets paid to the big by market proportion or whatever. Justin Bieber just bought an NFT of a Bored Ape for like $1 million. That's what people do with your money. So fill out your damn paperwork. It's not even paperwork anymore. It's just zeros and ones. It takes you 30 seconds. Click. Collect what's yours. Don't let Justin Bieber buy an NFT with your money.
Yes. Those folks, they've got plenty of yachts. They've got plenty of vacation homes. Get your money. And so many artists are still letting this get paid out. And you're going to hear about it in this episode. So to set up my interview with Kris Ahrend from the MLC, we're going to talk about mechanical royalties. We're going to talk about what they are, what's changed, why the MLC exists and its purpose, and alleviate some of the confusion about what ASCAP or your PRO does compared to the MLC, compared to CD Baby Pro. All those things get answered in this episode. So let's get to my interview with Kris. Well, joining me is Kris Ahrend, the CEO of the MLC. Kris, how are you doing? Thanks for being on the podcast.
Kevin, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's one of those things that artists are always wondering about royalties. It's such a confusing topic, and there's been changes recently, which brings us to the existence of the MLC that have artists still wondering, what are all these royalties? How do I get them? And so, looking forward to diving into that today. Most of our listeners are artists across the spectrum of both genre and experience. So some of them are just brand new, trying to figure out their way in this new music business. Others are, it's old hat, but still some of these things get confusing. So we can start all the way at the beginning, like what is the MLC? Where did it come from? And maybe your background in the music business, so we have some context.
Sure. Well, I can start briefly with my background. Like most of your listeners, it sounds, I was a musician. As a kid, I played in the band, I sang in the chorus, I started a rock band in high school, and I dreamed of making it, whatever that meant. And I made music. And I think one of the really important things when you sort of start from the beginning is to acknowledge that most of us, when we start out on our musical journey, we fundamentally don't understand one of the basic kind of legal or business building blocks of the business. And that is, there is a difference legally and from a business perspective between the song and the sound recording. And the reason most of us don't get that is because we grow up doing both.
Yeah.
Right? We write our own songs and we write them in front of a piano or a guitar. So we're playing, performing while we write. And those two things feel like they are one creative act. And in fact, they are, but from a business perspective, they create two different sets of rights. So the MLC is an organization that works with rights holders on the song side of our business. And the other side of the business is the performance or sound recording side. So you could write a song, write the lyrics, write the notes on a sheet of paper. I could do that and I can hand it to you. You're a performer, and you could perform that with your band. I would be the writer, you would be the performer. And if you made a recording, you would have certain rights to be paid when that recording was streamed. But I, as the songwriter, would have the right to be paid certain royalties when the song is streamed. So I think that's a good place to start. And again, as a musician, I get that challenge because thinking about those two things differently, songwriting and performing, is really hard when you start out doing both of them at the same time. And of course, you're not doing it for money. You don't understand the business. You're just doing it because you love music.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, so many artists, I think that's the first point of confusion, that they experience the industry where they are the label as themselves. They are the artist, they are the songwriter. They're wearing a lot of hats that they don't really understand, have some legal distinctions and also just business function distinctions that they are doing a lot all at once as indie artists, which we all know and feel, but don't necessarily understand the implications of that. So I know the MLC is relatively new in the overall scope of the music business. How did it come about? What is its purpose, and what changed to bring it to where it is today?
Yeah, the MLC has only been operating now for a little more than a year. And we were created by an act of Congress signed by the president back in 2018 called the Music Modernization Act. And Congress is the source of most of the underpinnings of the music business because the music business is based on copyright law, and copyright law is established at the federal level. So even though there can be some concepts of copyright protection, or at least historically there were some at the state level, copyright, generally speaking, is something that the federal government sets. So we were created by an act of Congress. The reason we exist is because of the evolution of the music business from the time that you and I were kids to what we know today. So, and I'll speak for myself. When I was a kid, records were released on vinyl or cassette. There were a few 8-tracks still lying around, and CD kind of arrived around the early 80s, and that was a very exciting time. But all records were physical formats, and you were essentially buying a thing. And once you bought that vinyl record, it was yours for the rest of your life. You could listen to it unlimited times, and all you had to do was pay up front for the price of the album. When digital came on the scene, first with piracy, but then with legitimate services like Apple's download store, essentially what happened was the industry found a way to create a digital version of a record. So when you would go to the download store, you would still buy a record, but you would buy a digital version of it. And once you bought it for your $9.99 an album, it was yours to play for as long as you kept your device or your computer. All of that really worked behind the scenes exactly the same way. Every time a record was sold, the person selling the record owed the writers of the songs on the record a royalty. And that royalty is called a mechanical royalty. And the mechanical royalty is named the mechanical royalty because it literally dates back to the player piano rolls in the early 1900s when music was copied physically on these piano rolls and someone would have to turn the piano to make the music. So it was a way to mechanically reproduce sound. And even through vinyl, cassette, CDs, what you were doing was essentially making copies of that song on the record and selling those copies. The one thing that changed when we moved to downloads was that now suddenly for the first time, we no longer had a really important constraint on how many records we could sell. For your listeners, I think there's an easy and honest way to think about it. For any of you who have vinyl, if I said to you, go to the corner of the room you're in and pick up a crate of vinyl, you would immediately think, well, that's going to be heavy because vinyl is heavy, right? It's a physical object, it takes up space. And in record stores, there was only so much physical space in the bins for records. In a download store where all the records are digital, there's unlimited shelf space. So as the business moved to digital, suddenly digital record stores could sell many, many more records than we were selling in the physical age. And that's important because at that time, and the way it had worked since 1909, was if I wanted to sell a record that featured one of your songs, Kevin, I had to find you and I had to get a license from you, and then I had to pay you royalties. And if you wrote that song with 3 other buddies, I had to make sure I had to deal with each of your buddies and I had to pay you all royalties. So essentially, we cleared all of these publishing rights, these mechanical rights, on a track-by-track, writer-by-writer basis. That was okay when record companies were releasing 20,000 records in a year, 40,000 records in a year. But today, now in the digital world, we see 40,000, maybe 50,000 tracks uploaded every day. Mm-hmm. And so there are literally tens of millions of tracks available on every digital store at any given moment. Streaming was the last bit of the story, and streaming was really what cinched this, because even in a sale business where you're selling digital records, there are only so many records you and I are going to buy, right? There are only so many $10 purchases I'm going to make. But in a streaming business, for $10 a month, roughly, my subscription fee, I have access to every song on that service. And I can listen to any song I want. And so what that means now is many, many more songs get streamed than were sold. And every one of those has to be cleared. So the streaming services, they ran into a really big problem. And that was they could not find all the writers for all the songs that were being streamed on their service. And that meant they couldn't pay the royalties or license the rights. And that led them to accumulate tens, we now know hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties that were never paid. Your money, other creators' money. That is the problem that fundamentally the MLC was created to solve. And that was to make it easier for the digital services to license the rights they needed from songwriters, these mechanical rights, and to then pay the royalties to those folks. And they do that all through the MLC now. We're the intermediary, the middleman that manages that process.
I see. How much would you say or estimate or percentage of the revenue generated from music is that mechanical royalty? I think that's one thing that, the formats have changed so much. I think with the digital space, especially streaming, I think artists are sort of unclear about how much money is this? How much a percentage of my overall revenue picture should this be?
Yeah. It's a tricky question to answer. In the old days, it was easy because every time you did a deal for a record and you paid a mechanical, it was generally keyed to the statutory rate for sales, which for the last 20 plus years has been 9.1 cents. And, you might have agreed to a reduced rate, 3/4 of that. But generally speaking, every time a record was sold, you could count on getting 9 cents for your song. And so what that meant is if you go to Billboard and Billboard reports that album has sold 1 million records, it's pretty easy math, right? 1 million times 9.1 cents equals my mechanicals for those sales. In the streaming world, it works differently. You get paid a small amount, a fraction of a penny, every time your song is streamed. The difference between a sale model and a streaming model is every time the song is streamed, every time someone listens to a song, you get paid. You and I were talking right before we got on. I was listening to a couple of songs by your band, and I think I listened to 5 songs before we joined. So I just created 5 per play royalties for your band that you'll probably get in the next 3 months, at least from the MLC, the mechanical piece. And every time I listen to your songs or anyone else does, that creates a little payment. So it's hard to change the way you think from I get 9 cents every time a record is sold to I get a tiny fraction of a penny every time a record is streamed, especially since that per play rate actually changes every month. And it's different on every service and for every service offering. So the amount that you get if I stream one of your songs on Spotify right now will be different than the amount you get if I streamed your song on YouTube streaming service or Apple streaming service. So a better way to think about it is, what are those royalties looking like on a monthly basis? And what we see in streaming is that those monthly payments tend to be more consistent over time because the people that listen to your music probably have it on playlists. They listen on a monthly basis and they don't stop listening from month to month. They don't change their playlist. So streaming is a more consistent revenue stream, harder to kind of conceptualize. But once you know, okay, I'm making $500 a month, $300 a month, then it's relatively easy to kind of see over time. You're probably going to make around that much each month, unless you release new music or, again, if your fan base drops off. But I don't know if that's helpful. I can't tell you how much a play is worth because I literally have a different answer for every one of the 40 DSPs that are using this blanket license we administer, and it would be different every month.
Yeah. So these platforms come to you and they get a blanket license that allows them to stream everything, or is it catalog by catalog? How does it work?
The blanket license that the law created means that the services can use any song that exists in the world, as long as that song is original and was authorized. So if you wanted to do a medley of 5 songs that were written by other people, you don't automatically get the right to do that. But generally speaking, if that song has been recorded and it was released for the first time, it is now open to the blanket. So once that song that you've written gets recorded and it's up the first time, anyone else in the world can re-record it, and that license covers that. So it's a pretty broad thing. And that solved the first part of their problem, which is they now are licensed, provided they comply with the blanket license terms. And those include reporting all the data on every stream that happens on their service to the MLC each month. And then, of course, paying us the royalties for those streams at the rates that are set by law. There are statutory rates, just like there is a statutory rate for sales. It's just the formulas are a lot more complicated.
That was going to be my next question. I know that Congress sets the rate, but are you able to advocate on behalf of payments for songwriters? How does that work? Are you involved in that aspect of it? I know so many artists are concerned about the payouts that songwriters get. I think step one is making sure they're getting the money, first of all, which is what you guys are doing. But are you involved with the rates that get set moving forward in the future?
The short answer is no, because we are this designated intermediary that is charged with managing the process. Congress did not allow us to be an advocate for either side, which makes sense. Our job is to make sure that whatever the rates are at any given moment, that they are administered properly. So we advocate for the process every day. We want better data, and we want folks to become members. We want to make sure they register their songs. And we look at all the ways that we can make that process better. But when it comes to how much the rates are, how much a service has to pay per play, we are not allowed to be a part of that. But the good news is there are lots of great advocacy organizations that are involved in that process. And they're out there advocating for the interests of rights holders. They're working with the DSPs. And again, whatever the outcome of that process is, the MLC's job is then to implement it and make sure that you get all the money that you're due.
So what platforms besides streaming platforms are you working with? Are you working with platforms like, I think you mentioned YouTube, but like TikTok and all these other social platforms that pop up? Artists are always curious of like, who's licensing these tracks that will deliver to a lot of these platforms. And so for the sound recording, they get paid through us. But oftentimes it's unclear on the publishing side because a lot of these tech companies go fast and ask for forgiveness later.
Yes. We could do a podcast probably about that, about how tech companies develop. But this is another place where we need to pause and kind of put another piece of the puzzle on the table. So we've been talking about the rights the MLC administers. They're called mechanical rights. There's another set of royalties for songwriters called performance rights. Those generate performance royalties. Those get generated when a song is performed in a public setting. So, for example, on the radio, at a venue. Streaming, interestingly, implicates both the performance right and the mechanical right. So, good news is when you do have a song on a streaming service, you actually get paid two different royalties as a songwriter. But some of the services you've mentioned, and a lot of the new services popping up, are video services. So you're not just hearing the music, but you're hearing the music synchronized to a visual image of some sort. Now, that could be a cat dancing or some 14-year-old doing a dance, or it could be some old guy trying to do a dance like a 14-year-old, which is pathetic, and that's why I don't do those. But whatever it is, once the audio is synchronized to a visual element of some sort, then that implicates a different right called the synchronization right. And that synchronization right encompasses not only the right to sync the sound of your song with the video, but then also to reproduce that combined work in all the ways you need to in order to run that service. So for services like TikTok or Instagram, the MLC does not administer those audiovisual rights because those require a synchronization license, and the law does not allow us to administer that. Congress wanted us to solve a very specific problem, and that problem relates to digital audio uses. And of course, because it's a federal law, it covers uses in the US. So we administer rights for streaming services in the US that deal with audio only, not the video side.
Okay. So that you made an important distinction because we have listeners to the podcast all over the world. So for an artist that said it's based in the UK, but is getting streams in the US, would the MLC be collecting on their behalf?
Yes. And now you start to see why the music business is so complicated, because everything I've just described relates to the way things work in the United States. Mm-hmm. But every country in the world has its own version of copyright laws, and those can be different from country to country. So now if you're an artist whose music is being streamed globally, because you can make your music available globally through CD Baby, you might have to deal with how this works in multiple countries. So to answer your question, because the license in the US, the blanket license, covers the use of any song that exists in the world, if your song is used on a US service, we can pay you royalties. And in fact, we are collecting your royalties, regardless of where you live. So a listener today in London, a listener in Tokyo, a listener in Germany, a listener in Johannesburg, South Africa, any country in the world, if you've written a song and it was recorded, and that recording is up on a US streaming service, there's a good chance that if it's being streamed, we're collecting royalties for you, and you need to connect with us in some way. I say connect with us because I think we're going to get to all the different ways you can connect.
That's a good point that you're making because, well, one, earlier on you mentioned performance royalties, and I want to make sure that we absolutely say that this is different than ASCAP or BMI or CSAC, which so many artists tend to confuse with this kind of mechanical royalty discussion. They always say, well, I'm with ASCAP, I'm covered here. I'm like, no, different organization, different charge as far as what they do and the type of royalty they collect. They are adjacent many times that, like you said, that there is a performance royalty generated on streaming services as a mechanical. So you want to be able to capture both of those, and it's different services that provide those collection options.
You're 100% right. And that is probably the most common question we get.
I bet.
I'm signed to a PRO like ASCAP or BMI, so I'm good, right? And the answer is you're good for performance royalties, but that has nothing to do with mechanicals. So again, going back to your audience, this is why the music business is so challenging, because that singular act of creating, right? When you write and perform a song and sing it into a microphone in your home studio, in that moment, you are creating, you're laying the foundation for all these different rights and all these different revenue streams. And if I were to say to you, when you go to work today, right, whatever you do, hey, would you like 2 checks or 1 for this work you did today? No one would say, I'm good with 1 paycheck. Everyone would take 2 paychecks. So in the publishing world, it's the same way. why would you settle for your performance paycheck when you're also equally entitled to a mechanicals paycheck? And the answer is you wouldn't if you knew that both existed. So that's why today we've helped everyone to kind of recognize if you're a songwriter and your stuff's on the streaming services in the US, you're entitled to two paychecks, a performance paycheck and a mechanical paycheck. And ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC handle the performance paycheck, and the MLC handles the mechanical paycheck. And you want to make sure that you're getting both paychecks. And again, we can talk more about how you do that on the MLC side.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I know for CD Baby, we have our CD Baby Pro service, which helps artists get registered with both, making sure their songs are registered, both to collect mechanicals and performance royalties with the appropriate services. But how does an artist interact with the MLC? What should they know? Do they need to list their songs with you directly? I know artists often hear about these black box royalties. That's been the story we've heard for a handful of years. Is that what's happening to my music if I don't register? What do I do?
So let's start with the idea that for every right that we just talked about, you need to know what organizations ultimately distribute those monies. And then you need to make sure you have a connection to them. And I use the word connection on purpose because connection doesn't mean direct connection. It can be indirect connection. And as we start talking about the landscape, again, you've got performance royalties, you've got mechanicals. If you also make your own sound recordings, you've got the sound recording royalties. There's a set of performance royalties for sound recording owners and performers that Sound Exchange covers. That's another organization here in the US. So you want to make sure that every organization that has money for your song or your sound recording has the data for your song. And generally, the way that happens is you or someone that you've hired will register the works that you've created with that organization. So the MLC is no different. We maintain a public database of all of the ownership information for all the songs in the US that we are administering. That database now contains about 25 million unique songs, and it's growing at a clip of almost 1 million a month. So it's expanding broadly. And you want to make sure that your songs are there. Now, if your songs are there, you also then have to answer the question, how do I want to collect those monies? You can become a member of the MLC. So anyone listening, you can become a direct member of the MLC, and we will pay you directly. However, for a lot of folks, the act of registering those songs, of typing in all the information about each one of the songs into a computer portal, and then doing that for all the places that have to pay you, and then doing that for all the countries where your songs are being listened to, streamed, is a lot of work. And it's not the thing you want to do, right? And I think when we get older, we start to realize my time is worth something. So if you're a songwriter, you're a performer, and your whole thing is I want to write songs every day, and you don't want to spend 1 or 2 days a week dealing with all of this data and administration, then you'd be really smart to get a partner. And CD Baby is a great partner on the sound recording side in the first instance, because you help millions of creators get their sound recordings up on these services. And your CD Baby Pro offering is a complement to that service that covers all the publishing. So again, for each creator, you've got to decide, do I want to do this myself or do I want to partner? And the good news is there are lots of partners that you can choose from. CD Baby is a great one, and it just becomes your choice. But the key is make a choice, because if you don't partner with CD Baby Pro and you don't sign up with the MLC, then to answer the question you touched on, Kevin, your money will now sit with us. And at some point in the future, several years from now at the earliest, the law will require us to distribute all that remaining money to all the people we could pay, because Congress didn't want the MLC sitting on a bunch of money. They certainly didn't want the MLC using that to pay bonuses to our team. They didn't want us to create education funds. They didn't want us to create an award show, right? Our sole job is to pass the money through. So if you don't ever claim your money, at some point we will give it to all the other people that got paid. Now, that means the money gets to a creator, but it won't get to you. So that's the choice you're ultimately making. Do I want that piece of money, whatever it is, or do I want to give it to Kevin and other songwriters who have taken care of business and gotten their stuff registered?
Yeah. So there's no set time yet when that date is. Like, I know a lot of artists would say, okay, I need to get my house in order. They sign up with CD Baby Pro or they go to the MLC directly. And they're like, man, I've had this music out for a couple years. Can they recapture that revenue that's out there,
Yeah.
or
Yes, it is not too late. So we've only been administering the blanket license since January of last year. We've done 10 monthly distributions.
Okay.
Any royalties that we've received since January, if you didn't register your work, we're holding them and we're actually accruing interest. So that if you register all your stuff tomorrow, we will pay you for all those uses up until now, plus we'll pay you going forward. And obviously, you've got to register your works. One of the other features of the law gave the digital services that had accrued all these royalties that were unpaid, gave them the option to give all that money to the MLC and effectively make it our problem.
Mhm.
And 21 DSPs did that, and they handed over $426 million. So all of that money is now sitting with us, and we are working behind the scenes through all of the data that we got for that money, 4,400 plus files of data. And we're going to start trying to match that data to the rights information in our database. And as we do that, we're going to pay you the royalties. So maybe you had a song that you released 5 years ago and you never got a dime for it because you didn't have a connection with the services. They had to hand that money to us, or at least they had the option to. It's now with us. If we can make that match, we'll pay you royalties going back 5 years, 10 years. The law basically said if you're going to do this digital services, you got to hand over every royalty you didn't pay going back to the time your service started. So for a handful of the oldest services, we've got royalties that potentially go back as far as 2010 or I think even 8. But again, that window of opportunity will not stay open forever. It'll definitely be open for the next couple of years. But at some point, we have to ultimately liquidate all that money because the law does not, Congress did not want us to sit on it forever.
Yeah.
So now's the time. You are not too late. And again, whether you do it yourself or with a great partner like CD Baby Pro, you can get your data in our database, make that connection, and then start getting those royalties.
Yeah. So definitely, if artists hear one thing today, it's time to take care of business because you don't want to miss out on that money. And I know that we have lots of artists who listen to this podcast and who use our services that have significant amount of plays and streams, especially over the years on these digital platforms, and probably have sizable chunks of money sitting there waiting for them that is owed. And yeah, it's their money. They should get it. So
And you hit the point, Kevin. Even if it's $100, right?
I'll take 100
Right.
bucks.
It's $100, and the time you invest now in getting all those songs set up in our system will then pay you a dividend for as long as those songs are up on the service. So once it's registered and we're paying you every month, we're going to pay you if the songs are streamed. So there is some work to be done on the front end if you're starting from scratch. But once that's done, it's going to keep working for you, and you won't have to do all that work every month. So it's important. It's also important because the data that we compile is now publicly available, not only to search. So anyone today, if you go to our website, www.themlc.com, it's the name of our company.com, top right-hand side of the screen, there's a yellow button, public search. You click on that, you can search all the data in our database around ownership. So if you wrote a song and it's up on Spotify today, right now, go to our website, go to the public search, look up the name of your song or your name, and see if you can find your song in our database. That's really important. If it's not there, we can't pay you. But in addition to making the data available through the public search, we make the data available in bulk. So any organization in the world can take all of our data. We have been making it available on a weekly basis in a snapshot, like one big file, but we're now launching an API, basically a computer-to-computer connection that'll allow folks to ping our database real time. So there are now almost 100 organizations that are accessing our data every week. And all of those organizations will have the benefit of the data. So once you put the data in our database, there's a good chance that it's going to get into the databases of other companies that may also have money for you. So really getting your data in order with the MLC is like laying the foundation for your entire business. And one thing we say all the time is in the music business today, the dollars are driven by data and your data equals dollars. So again, if you want to do this for fun as a hobby, don't worry about your data. But if you care about the financial part of it in any way, even if it's just, again, I want that $100 a year, you got to get the data right. That's how the business works. And we want to make that as easy for you as possible.
Yeah, we talk about it in the sense of like professionalizing your music rights.
Yes.
It's a matter of whether you're doing this part-time or for fun, or this is your full-time job. You got to have your music rights professionalized in order to make sure all the money's flowing the right way. And the thing that's great about music to me, because some artists may be thinking, well, I don't have much going on right now. I've got albums out there, but not a lot's happening. The thing I love about music and a music career is you never know when something's going to connect, something might hit, lightning might strike. It happens all the time. A
Yes.
song might get thrown in a big playlist. It might get synced in TV or film, which drives a lot of other activity. You never know what can happen. And if you're not prepared for it, you're just causing yourself headache in trying to, you know, go back and fix all these problems.
There's a reason why the expression "you can't put the genie back in the bottle" exists, right? It's really hard to put the pieces in place after the fact.
Yes.
And if you're prepared and everything's set up on the front end, if that moment happens, then you're ready to ride that wave. And if you're not prepared, then you're chasing the wave. And it's really hard. It's hard to chase down all those pieces. We see it all the time. And again, it's your work, right? I also think, as a creator, if you've spent the time to buy the equipment, right? You've got a Pro Tools setup at home. You bought a great Gibson guitar, and you've got a really great microphone, right? You spent the money and got a really pro level Shure microphone, and you built a website that looks fantastic. Like, you're doing all those things at a professional level. Why would you drop the data piece, right? Put the data in the mix too, and make sure that people can find your stuff, and then you're ready, right? And if it doesn't amount to, as much as you'd like, okay, but you did it. You did it across the board. And it's important. We want the database to be a database of record for the industry. It shouldn't just be about, am I getting paid enough to do it? And so again, we're trying to make that process as easy as possible so that as many people as possible will register their songs. And that will make our process work effectively for you, but ultimately it will make the whole business work more effectively for musicians. And that's important, right? It should work for everybody, not just the folks that make the most successful songs or recordings at the very top. And, that's another part of the business, Kevin, right? When you and I started, I always joke, I made a couple of tracks and they never went further than the cassette player in my car because I had no access to the market. That's it. And today you can make music and you can put it up, and people around the world can listen to it. So take advantage of that, but also take advantage of the opportunity to get the business in order too. Be all in if you're going to be in it.
Yeah. Agreed. 100%. Last question I have as related to how things might have changed with the existence of the MLC. Does that change the requirements for an artist that wants to do cover songs? Songs that they're not going to earn those mechanicals from, but does how things are working now change what they need to do in order to get songs cleared in order to record a cover song?
So it's a great question, and I think a really important one for your audience, because most of us, when we start out, we record someone else's songs, right? You start playing the songs that you love, and then you start experimenting with writing your own. So a cover is the term we use to describe when you perform and record a song that someone else wrote. We often think about it as we covered the song by another performer, but in reality, you're re-recording the song, right, after the artist that made the song famous recorded it. So when you're doing this on your own and you record a song, maybe you record a big U2 song or a Stones song, whatever, a Pearl Jam song. In that moment, you should be essentially identifying that song as the song written by that other group of writers. And you want to give them credit. You don't want to say, I wrote that song that Pearl Jam wrote and recorded. Because all you're doing at that point is claiming to have written their stuff. And that's, it's pretty crappy, right? Why would you do that? But more importantly, if you do that and then you set up the data for that song correctly, then what's actually going to happen is the writer who wrote that song will get a little bit of money when your song is streamed, your version of it is streamed. So in that way, you're honoring the person whose song you love by making sure that they get paid when your version of their song is out there. Now, the law allows you to record covers without getting consent, provided you don't change the song in any material way. So I could do a jazz version of a rock song, or I could do a blues version of an Americana song. And as long as I don't change the words or the verses or dramatically change the music, that's fine. But if you then use it on a video, right, in any kind of video format, now it totally changes because video requires consent ahead of time. So you just have to think about what you're doing. And in the first instance, if all you want to do is record the audio, your track, and get it up on Spotify, and you have not materially changed the nature of the song itself, then the blanket license will cover that. Okay. But if you decide to do your interpretation of a Beatles song where you change the lyrics and add 5 verses, now you got to get permission from, McCartney and the Lennon estate, and that's more complicated. And we'll probably save that for another day because yeah. But the key is just don't claim credit. Don't claim you wrote a Beatles song. Honor the people you love and list them as the writers when you record their song, and that will help make all this work better for them. And then, of course, when you wrote the song, it's going to work better for you. Yeah.
Well, we won't let people distribute it without the right info because we want to get them paid properly. So
yes, another reason to work with good partners. Right?
Yes, exactly. That is true.
This is what you do. And I think you can't underscore that enough, Kevin. All of us have certain things that we like in life, that we're passionate about, that we're good at. I don't do my taxes because I don't like doing my taxes. And it's worth every penny to pay someone else to do it for me every year. If this is not your thing, find someone else who likes it and is good at it and have them do it for you. It'll be worth the investment. But if you want to try to figure it out, know that organizations like ours, and certainly you with your podcast and all of the resources that CD Baby put out there are organizations like us that are out here helping you, ready to help you figure it out. And it's your choice.
Excellent. Well, I know the MLC is relatively new. Do you have anything on the horizon that you want to share, or any ways artists can connect with you further?
I will just leave with this. All of this is complicated. We covered a lot of ground today, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people are kind of spinning right now, like, I don't understand what just happened, and why you should listen to this multiple times, because I think that's always great. If you have questions, know that we have a really fantastic support team of MLC employees, and their sole job is to respond to you when you call us or email us, or if you become a member, if you chat with us in our chat. We're available 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And again, all MLC employees, and they've been trained to answer hundreds of questions that you likely have. So if you don't get any of this, if you're not sure how it works, you just want to talk with someone about it, give our support team a call. It's free. Everything the MLC does is free for you. We don't charge an admin fee. Obviously, if you partner with a company, they may take a fee, as they should, because they're doing work for you. But the MLC is free. The digital services pay all of our operating costs. So give us a call, email our help desk, and ask us anything, and we'll try our best to help you figure this all out.
All right. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for being on the podcast. And I know that our paths with CD Baby and MLC will continue to cross it. We're going to be at South by Southwest, hanging out for a happy hour, and hopefully you all will be at our DIY Musician Conference coming up later this year. And so lots of opportunities to connect. So thank you for being here, Kris.
I can't wait to get out of my house. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks again to Kris from the MLC for being on the podcast. I hope that helped understand mechanical royalties. Things have been changing. Some of the new copyright laws have allowed for the MLC to exist and better license these things. And Kris, you said you had a comment that something Kris said that you liked.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so you and I are in this world, and it's still, I wouldn't say confusing, but I benefit from refreshers on this topic and related topics often. And I just liked his story about, like, hey, imagine I told you to go pick up the vinyl records in the corner and you think of how heavy they are versus the availability of everything that's ever been recorded, weighing nothing and unlimited shelf space in your pocket. Just as like a quick visual representation of how drastically things have changed in, 40 years, 20 years, 2 years, like things speed up. And I just like that the MLC is here to simplify that in a world where usage can be tracked in a digital way as opposed to the old fashioned, like getting out your ledger and having to survey things like that. So yeah, I just liked his sort of summing it up in that little visualization.
Yeah. That the idea of picking up a crate of records, it's like, man, the world has changed drastically. How we used to think about and consume music. It used to be this thing you'd go get and stick in some sort of media device to play it, and now it's just all there available to you. And understanding how that has changed how the money flows and your rights and all those kind of things. So very appreciative to Kris for being on the podcast. You will be seeing more of CD Baby in the Southwest. We're doing a happy hour with the MLC and Song Trust, our sister company Song Trust. So if you're down there at South by Southwest, you can come by and say hi. I'm sure the MLC will be at the DIY Musician Conference coming up later this year. They've talked to us about being there and having a presence. So looking forward to that as well.
And then just in case you didn't hammer this point home enough in the interview, if you work with CD Baby Pro Publishing, you don't need to sign up directly with the MLC. We've already taken care of it. So
yeah,
you're good.
yeah. And Kris highlights that, and just how much of it is just making sure that the data for your songs has been entered into the system, which is what we do at CD Baby Pro, and that data gets out to the world so people know who owns the song and who needs to get paid for it. So very, very important. And I will say that, I would say that my band is probably gets the same or an average amount of streams compared to a lot of people listening to this podcast. And I'm surprised how big those quarterly checks are for publishing money every quarter. We're not going out and buying new cars, but a couple $100 here and there every quarter. I'll take it.
Well, and to go back to sort of what we said at the very beginning of the show, it's your money. So
Yes.
Why would you let it get put in some black box that eventually gets opened up to paid to the big names, the big rights holders? It's yours.
Yeah. Is the box actually black?
And is it a box? How do we know it's not an oval with like a
Why can't it be a red
Yeah.
box?
Yeah, right.
Like warning, your money's going away. All right. Well, again, reminder, the DIY Musician Conference coming to Austin, August 26th through 28th this year. Tickets $99. For what you're going to get, that's $99. Very well spent. So lock that in today. And don't forget to subscribe. We're dropping these podcasts pretty much weekly. They're on YouTube, they're on Spotify, they're on Apple Podcasts, and you don't want to miss an episode. And yeah, there you have it. I think that's going to bring us to the end.